The stars looked different from this far out. Lieutenant Jake Harrison pressed his hand against the observation window of the horizon's edge and watched the blue-green planet growing larger in the viewport. Ashara Prime, home to the Valerian Empire, one of the oldest civilizations in the known galaxy, and humanity's best hope for survival. Jake was 28 years old and had seen plenty of action in his 10 years of service. He'd fought pirates in the asteroid belts, protected mining colonies from raiders, and done 3 tours on hostile worlds. But nothing in his training had prepared him for diplomatic missions. He was a soldier, not a politician, yet here he was, assigned to protect Ambassador Helen Carter and her delegation during the most important negotiations in human history. The ship's intercom crackled to life. "All personnel, we will be docking in 30 minutes. Diplomatic team, please report to the briefing room." Jake straightened his uniform and headed down the corridor. The ship was smaller than a military vessel, but well appointed for its purpose. Humanity had only been part of the Galactic Council for 15 years, and they were still the new kids on the block. Every other species had thousands of years of space travel under their belts. Humans were barely crawling out of their own solar system when first contact happened. In the briefing room, Ambassador Carter stood before a holographic display of the Valerian royal family. She was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. "Listen up, everyone," she said. "The Valerians are sophisticated, telepathic, and very traditional. We need their medical technology. Our colonies are dying from a plague we can't cure. They have the answer." Jake studied the hologram. The Valerian royal family looked almost human, but their skin was pale blue, like the color of ice under moonlight. Their hair was silver and seemed to shimmer even in the still image. The youngest daughter caught his attention, Princess Ilara. She looked about his age with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "Lieutenant Harrison," the ambassador called out. "You'll be assigned to Princess Ilara's security detail during her tour of our ship. It's a gesture of goodwill. The Queen wants her daughter to learn about humanity." "Yes, ma'am," Jake replied. "Great. Babysitting duty." The docking procedure went smoothly. The Valerian delegation came aboard 3 hours later. Jake stood at attention in the receiving bay with the rest of the security team. When the airlock opened, he got his first real look at the Valerians. They moved with an unnatural grace, almost floating across the floor. Their clothing was elegant, made of fabrics that shifted colors in the light. At the front of the group was Princess Ilara, flanked by her own guards. She was more beautiful in person than any hologram could capture. Her silver hair fell past her shoulders, and her pale blue skin seemed to glow from within. The formal greetings took forever. Jake kept his expression neutral and his eyes forward. He'd been trained for this. Don't stare. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't embarrass humanity. Finally, the princess approached him. Her guards tensed, but she waved them back. "You are Lieutenant Harrison?" she asked. Her voice was musical, with an accent he couldn't quite place. "Yes, Your Highness," Jake replied. "I understand you will be showing me your vessel." She smiled, and Jake noticed her eyes were violet. Not blue like he'd expected, but a deep purple that reminded him of twilight back on Earth. "That's correct, ma'am, if you'll follow me." The tour started in engineering. The Valerian technology was far superior to anything humans had, but the princess seemed genuinely interested in how human systems worked. She asked questions that showed real intelligence, not just polite curiosity. "Why do you use such inefficient power cores?" she asked, studying the reactor display. Jake appreciated the directness. "Because it's what we can build with what we have. We're still learning, but you have been traveling in space for decades now." "Decades," Jake said. "Your people have been doing it for millennia. We're playing catch-up." Ilara tilted her head, studying him. "You do not seem embarrassed by this. Why would I be? Everyone starts somewhere. What matters is that we keep moving forward." Something flickered in her expression. Interest, maybe. They continued through the ship, stopping at the medical bay, the crew quarters, and finally the observation deck where Jake had been standing earlier. The princess walked to the window and gazed out at her homeworld. "It must be strange for you," she said softly. "Being so far from Earth." "Sometimes," Jake admitted. He wasn't supposed to make small talk, but something about her made him forget protocol. "But the stars are the same everywhere. That's comforting." "Are they?" Ilara turned to face him. "I have never thought about it that way. To me, these stars are home. To you, they are foreign." Foreign doesn't mean unfriendly, Jake said. They stood in silence for a moment. Then the princess asked, "What is that?" She pointed to a small device on Jake's belt. "Music player," he said. "Personal item. Helps me relax off duty." "Music? May I hear?" Jake hesitated. This wasn't part of the official tour. But the princess looked genuinely curious. He pulled out the player in his earbuds, then realized Valerian ears were shaped differently. He switched it to speaker mode and played something soft. Classical guitar from Earth. Alara closed her eyes and listened. When the song ended, she opened them again, and Jake was surprised to see moisture there. "That was beautiful," she whispered. "So much emotion. I did not know humans could create such things." "We're full of surprises," Jake said with a slight smile. "Yes," Alara said, returning the smile. "I am beginning to understand that." Her guards appeared at the entrance, signaling it was time to return to the diplomatic reception. The princess nodded. "Thank you, Lieutenant Harrison. This has been most enlightening. My pleasure, Your Highness." As she walked away, Jake found himself watching her go. There was something different about her. Most of the aliens he'd met treated humans with polite condescension, like adults humoring children. But Alara had spoken to him like an equal, like she actually wanted to understand. That night, Jake stood his watch on the ship while the diplomats attended the formal state dinner planetside. He found himself thinking about violet eyes and a voice like music. He shook his head. That was dangerous thinking. She was a princess. He was a soldier. Their worlds were literally billions of miles apart. Still, as he stared out at Ashara Prime, he wondered if she was looking up at the stars too. Wondering about the human who had shown her his music. Probably not. She had probably already forgotten about him. He was wrong about that. But he wouldn't know it until 3 days later when everything changed, and he found himself dying on a palace floor with those violet eyes looking down at him. The Crystal Pavilion was the most beautiful building Jake had ever seen. It rose from the palace grounds like a massive diamond, catching the light of Ashara Prime's 3 moons and scattering it into 1,000 colors. Inside, the grand reception was in full swing. Thousands of dignitaries from dozens of worlds filled the hall, their conversations creating a buzz that echoed off the crystal walls. Jake stood at his post near the main entrance, wearing his dress uniform. The negotiations had gone well. Ambassador Carter had secured a preliminary agreement for the medical technology humanity desperately needed. Tonight's reception was a celebration, but Jake knew better than to relax. Crowds were dangerous. Too many bodies, too many blind spots, too many ways for something to go wrong. He scanned the room constantly, his hand resting near his sidearm. Most of the security was handled by Valerian guards, but the human delegation had insisted on maintaining their own detail. Professional pride maybe, or maybe just not wanting to look weak in front of the galaxy's older civilizations. Princess Alara stood near the center of the hall, surrounded by admirers. She wore a gown that seemed to be made of liquid silver, and her hair was braided with strings of small crystals that caught the light. Jake had seen her twice since the tour of the ship. Once at a formal dinner where they'd exchanged polite nods, and once in a garden where they'd talked for almost an hour about human literature. She'd been reading Shakespeare and had questions about whether humans really loved that intensely. Jake had told her yes, they did. Sometimes love was the only thing that made humans do impossible things. He hadn't meant to sound so serious, but she'd looked at him with those violet eyes and said, "I think I am beginning to understand your species, Lieutenant." Now, watching her smile and laugh with alien dignitaries, Jake felt a strange tightness in his chest. He pushed it away. Focus on the job. That's when he noticed something wrong. There were servers moving through the crowd with trays of drinks. That was normal. But one server was moving differently. His path was too direct, too purposeful. And his eyes weren't on the guests he was supposed to be serving. They were fixed on Princess Alara. Jake's instincts screamed. He'd learned to trust that feeling in combat. It had saved his life more times than he could count. He started moving, pushing through the crowd as politely as possible. The server had reached the edge of Alara's circle. His hand went to his tray, but not to offer drinks. When he lifted it, Jake saw the weapon hidden underneath. A plasma pistol, small but deadly. Time seemed to slow down. Jake's training took over. He couldn't draw his weapon fast enough. He couldn't shout a warning that would be heard over the crowd. He had maybe 2 seconds before that assassin fired. So Jake did the only thing he could. He ran. People shouted as he burst through the circle around the princess. Ilara turned, her eyes wide with surprise. The assassin's finger was already squeezing the trigger. Jake slammed into Ilara, knocking her aside. He felt the heat of the plasma blast before he heard the sound. It hit him square in the chest, burning through his uniform, through his body armor, through flesh and bone. The pain was beyond anything he'd ever experienced. It felt like his entire chest was on fire, like someone had poured molten metal into his lungs. He heard screaming. Maybe it was his own voice. He couldn't tell. He hit the floor hard. His vision was already getting dark around the edges, but he managed to pull his sidearm. The assassin was lining up another shot at the princess. Jake fired 3 times. His aim was terrible, his hand shaking. But one bullet found its target. The assassin went down. Then chaos erupted. More figures were pushing through the crowd. More assassins. Jake tried to get up, tried to protect Ilara, but his body wouldn't respond. He couldn't breathe. Each attempt to draw air sent fresh waves of agony through his chest. Valerian guards were everywhere suddenly, their weapons drawn. Human security was shouting orders. Ambassador Carter was being rushed to safety. And through it all, Jake could hear one voice screaming above the rest. No. No, please. Ilara. She was on her knees beside him, her silver dress staining red with his blood. Her hands pressed against his chest, trying to stop the bleeding. It wouldn't work. He knew that. The plasma blast had done too much damage. Stay with me, Ilara was saying. Tears streamed down her face. Please, Jake, stay with me. He'd never heard her use his first name before. It sounded nice. He wanted to tell her it was okay, that he'd made the choice knowing what it would cost, that she was worth it. But the words wouldn't come. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Ilara's hands were glowing now. Pale blue light emanated from her palms where they pressed against his wound. He felt something strange, like a warmth spreading through his chest that was different from the burning pain. It was gentle, soothing. I will not let you die, Ilara said fiercely. Do you hear me? I will not allow it. Her eyes were locked on his. Those beautiful violet eyes. Jake felt something else then, something he couldn't quite understand. It was like a thread connecting them, pulling tight. He could feel her emotions pouring into him. Fear, desperation, and something else. Something that felt like what he felt when he looked at her. Healers. Someone was shouting. Get the healers now! Jake's vision was fading fast. The sounds of the hall were getting distant, like he was sinking underwater. The last thing he saw before the darkness took him was Ilara's face. She was saying something, but he couldn't hear the words anymore. His last conscious thought was relief. She was alive. That's what mattered. Whatever happened to him now, at least she was safe. Then there was nothing but darkness and pain and a distant feeling that someone was calling his name, over and over, refusing to let him go. When Queen Mystera arrived at the scene, her daughter was covered in human blood, her hands still pressed against the fallen soldier's chest. The healers were trying to pull her away, but Ilara wouldn't move. Mother, Ilara sobbed, I cannot feel him anymore. The connection is fading. He is dying. The queen looked down at the human who had saved her daughter's life. His chest was barely moving. There was so much blood. Bring him to the medical wing, the queen commanded. Use every resource we have. This human will not die in my palace. As they lifted Jake onto a medical transport, Ilara climbed in beside him, still refusing to let go. The queen watched her daughter and saw something that made her ancient heart skip a beat. The way Ilara looked at this human. The way she held on to him like he was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. The queen had seen that look before. Thousands of years ago, in a different time, on her own face when she'd found her bondmate dying on a battlefield. No, Mystera whispered. It cannot be, but it was. Her daughter had bonded with a human, a species they'd known for barely 15 years, a soldier from a world so young it was still learning to walk among the stars. The queen turned to her guards. Secure the area, find every assassin, and send word to the council. There will be consequences for this attack. Then she followed the transport to the medical wing. If this human died, she would lose her daughter too. The bond would break Ilara's heart in ways that might never heal. Fight, human, the queen said quietly. Fight for her. She needs you to fight. The Royal Medical Wing was a place of soft light and quiet machines. Jake floated in a regeneration chamber, his body suspended in clear fluid that glowed with a faint blue light. Tubes and sensors connected to his chest, monitoring every heartbeat, every shallow breath. His face was pale, almost gray. The readings on the displays above the chamber flickered and jumped in patterns that worried even the most experienced Valerian healers. Princess Ilara sat in a chair beside the chamber. She had been there for 6 days without leaving. Her silver dress was long gone, replaced by simple robes. Her hair hung loose around her shoulders. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She ate only when her mother forced food into her hands, and she slept not at all. Her hands pressed against the glass of the chamber, glowing with that same pale blue light. She was using her telepathic abilities to maintain a connection with Jake's fading consciousness. The healers had explained it to the human delegation in simple terms. She was acting as an anchor, keeping his spirit tied to his body while they worked to repair the massive damage the plasma blast had caused. Ambassador Carter visited every day. She stood behind Ilara now, watching the princess with sad eyes. "Your Highness," she said softly, "you need to rest. Our doctors say Lieutenant Harrison is stable." "He is not stable," Ilara replied without looking away from Jake. Her voice was hoarse from crying. "I can feel him slipping away. Every hour he drifts further. If I let go, he will die." Carter looked at the Queen, who stood on the other side of the chamber. Mystara's face was unreadable, but her eyes held a deep concern that went beyond diplomatic relations. "How long can she maintain this?" Carter asked. "As long as necessary," the Queen replied. "My daughter has a strong will." "But at what cost to herself?" The Queen didn't answer. She knew the cost. She'd paid it herself once, long ago. The bond between souls was not something that could be broken easily. It was deeper than love, more fundamental than emotion. It was two spirits recognizing each other across time and space and choosing to intertwine. That her daughter had found such a connection with a human was unprecedented. Troubling to some of the court. But Mystara understood. The soul did not care about species or politics or the opinions of nobles. It only cared about finding its match. The head healer approached, his expression grave. "Your Majesty, we have done all we can." His heart was severely damaged. His lungs were burned. "We have rebuilt what we could, but his body is not accepting the regeneration as it should. There may be something in human biology we do not understand." "Keep trying," the Queen ordered. "Yes, Your Majesty, but I must tell you the next 48 hours are critical. If he does not improve, even with the princess's help, he may not survive." After the healer left, Carter spoke again. "If he dies, what happens to her?" "She will survive," the Queen said, "but she will carry the wound of a broken bond for the rest of her life. It will change her in ways I cannot predict." "Then we'd better hope he's as stubborn as most humans," Carter said. She placed a gentle hand on Ilara's shoulder. "He was a good man, Your Highness. One of our best. If anyone can fight through this, it's Jake Harrison." Ilara finally looked up. Her violet eyes were red from crying. "Tell me about him," she whispered. "Tell me who he is when he is not a soldier." Carter smiled sadly. He grew up in Colorado in the mountains. His father was a mechanic, his mother a teacher. He joined the military because he wanted to see the stars. He used to send letters home to his younger sister, describing all the worlds he visited. He loved music. He loved old books. He believed that humans had something special to offer the galaxy, even if we were late to the party. "He showed me music," Ilara said, "on the ship. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard." "That sounds like Jake. He never thought he was anything special, but he had a way of making you see the beauty in simple things." Ilara turned back to the chamber. "I see it," she said. "Through our connection, I see his memories. His childhood in the mountains, the first time he saw Earth from space, the day he read a book that made him cry. I see his heart, Ambassador. It is pure and good and strong. This is why I cannot let him go." On the 7th day, something changed. The monitors began to stabilize. Jake's heartbeat grew stronger. His breathing deepened. The healers rushed in, checking readings and adjusting treatments. Ilara gasped.
"I can feel him," she said.
"He is coming back." Jake's eyes opened slowly. The chamber fluid made everything look blurry, but he could make out shapes, lights, faces. And then, as his vision cleared, he saw her. Ilara's face pressed against the glass, tears streaming down her cheeks, her hands glowing where they touched the chamber. He tried to speak, but the fluid prevented it. He tried to move, but his body was weak. All he could do was look at her. And in that moment, he felt it. The connection she'd forged between them. It was like a bridge between their minds, their hearts. He could feel her relief washing over him. Her joy, her exhaustion, and something else. Something that made his breath catch. He could feel her love. It poured into him like warm sunlight, chasing away the darkness that had been threatening to consume him. The healers began the process of draining the chamber. It took hours. When they finally opened it and removed the tubes, Jake coughed and gasped, his lungs remembering how to breathe air again. Hands lifted him onto a medical bed. Someone draped a blanket over him, and then Alara was there, kneeling beside the bed, taking his hand in both of hers. "You came back," she sobbed. "You came back to me. Couldn't let you." Jake's voice was barely a whisper. "Cry alone." She laughed through her tears. "You nearly died and you make jokes?" "Human thing," he managed. The healers were fussing over him, checking his vital signs, but Alara wouldn't let go of his hand. Jake didn't want her to. That connection between them was still there, thrumming like a living thing. He could feel her emotions as clearly as his own. "What is this?" he asked. "What happened to us?" Ilara looked at her mother, who had moved closer. The queen studied Jake with ancient eyes. "You are bonded," Mystera said simply. "In our culture, this is the rarest and most sacred of connections. Two souls recognizing each other and choosing to intertwine. My daughter maintained a telepathic link with you for 7 days. In doing so, she shared her essence with you and you with her. This bond cannot be easily broken." Jake looked at Alara. "I can feel what you feel," he said. "And I can feel you," she replied. "Your confusion. Your wonder. Your fear that this is not real." "It is real," Jake said. He squeezed her hand. "I don't understand it, but I can feel it. You anchored me. You kept me from drifting away. I could not let you die," Alara said. "Not after what you did. Not after I realized what you meant to me." Ambassador Carter cleared her throat gently. "Your Majesty, if I may, what are the implications of this bond?" The Queen's expression was serious. "In Valerian law, such a bond is recognized as sacred. Those who are bonded are considered one soul in two bodies. My daughter and Lieutenant Harrison are now connected in ways that go beyond marriage or partnership. They will sense each other's emotions, perhaps even thoughts. They will know when the other is in danger or pain." "For how long?" Jake asked. "Forever," the Queen replied. "Unless one of you dies, the bond remains." The room fell silent. Jake stared at Alara. She stared back. Neither of them looked afraid. Instead, Jake felt a rightness settling into his bones. This strange, impossible connection felt more natural than anything he'd ever experienced. "I am sorry," Alara whispered. "I did not mean to trap you in this." "You didn't trap me," Jake said. He pulled her hand to his chest, right over his healing heart. "You saved me. I'm not sorry about that, even though we are now bound together." Jake smiled, the first real smile since waking up. "I can think of worse fates than being connected to someone like you." Ilara's tears started again, but this time they were tears of joy. Jake's recovery took 3 weeks. The Valerian medical technology was incredible, but his body still needed time to fully heal. During those weeks, Alara barely left his side. They talked for hours, learning about each other through both words and the strange bond that connected them. She told him about growing up in the palace, about the weight of being royalty, about her love of literature and her curiosity about other worlds. He told her about the mountains of Colorado, about his sister's laugh, about the first time he realized how big the universe really was. Every day, the bond between them grew stronger. Jake could sense when Alara was approaching before she entered a room. He knew when something troubled her, even if she smiled. And she knew him just as completely. There was no hiding from each other, no pretense. It should have been terrifying, but instead it felt like coming home. The conspiracy behind the assassination attempt unraveled quickly. A faction of Valerian nobles who believed humans were too primitive to be trusted had hired off-world mercenaries to kill Princess Ilara. Their plan was to frame humanity and destroy the Alliance. They had failed spectacularly. Instead of weakening human-Valerian relations, the attack had strengthened them. Jake's sacrifice had shown the galaxy something important about humanity. They protected those they cared about, even at the cost of their own lives. On the day Jake was cleared to leave medical care, Queen Mystara summoned him to the throne room. Ambassador Carter accompanied him, along with what seemed like half the Valerian court. The massive hall was filled with nobles in their finest clothing, dignitaries from dozens of worlds, and a media presence that made Jake nervous. "This is bigger than I expected," Jake muttered to Carter. "The Queen is making a statement," Carter replied. "Just follow her lead." Jake walked into the throne room on steady legs. His chest still ached sometimes, but the healers said he would make a full recovery. Ilara stood beside her mother's throne, wearing a gown of deep blue that matched her skin. When their eyes met, Jake felt warmth flow through the bond. Reassurance. Support. Queen Mystara rose from her throne. The hall fell silent. Her voice carried through the space without effort, amplified by technology Jake couldn't see. "We are gathered today to honor a hero," the Queen began. "3 weeks ago, assassins attempted to murder my daughter. They failed because one man, a human soldier, placed himself between the weapon and its target. Lieutenant Jake Harrison took a blast meant for Princess Ilara. He nearly died protecting her." The Queen gestured for Jake to approach. He walked forward, acutely aware of thousands of eyes watching him. He stopped at the base of the throne and bowed, as protocol demanded. "For this act of selfless courage," the Queen continued, "I hereby grant Lieutenant Jake Harrison the title of Shield of the Royal House. He is elevated to nobility, with all the rights and privileges such rank entails." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A human noble. It was unprecedented, but the Queen wasn't finished. She descended from her throne and approached Jake. Her eyes were the same violet as her daughter's, but ancient and wise. "There is more," Mystara said. "During Lieutenant Harrison's recovery, my daughter maintained a telepathic connection with him for 7 days and nights. In doing so, a bond was formed, a soul-deep connection that occurs perhaps once in a generation. Even among my people, such bonds are sacred." The murmurs grew louder. Ilara moved to stand beside Jake. She took his hand, and the bond between them hummed with her nervousness and determination. "By ancient right and sacred law," the Queen declared, "I make this proclamation before all gathered here. Jake Harrison is mine. He is claimed by the royal house as family, as protector, as my daughter's chosen bondmate." The throne room erupted. Nobles were shouting to be heard. Alien dignitaries were talking rapidly among themselves. Ambassador Carter looked shocked. This was beyond anything they'd discussed. Jake felt Ilara's hand tighten on his. Through the bond, he felt her hope and her fear. She wanted this. She wanted him. But she was also afraid he would reject her in front of everyone. He should have been overwhelmed. He should have been confused. A month ago, he was just a soldier doing his job. Now he was nobility, bonded to a princess, being claimed by a queen in front of half the galaxy. But looking at Ilara's face, feeling her emotions mix with his own, Jake knew what he had to do. "Your Majesty," he said clearly, loud enough for the hall to hear, "I must respectfully decline." The hall went completely silent. Even the Queen looked surprised. Ilara's emotions crashed into him through the bond. Shock, hurt, confusion. "You decline?" the Queen asked slowly. "Yes, ma'am." Jake's heart was pounding, but he kept his voice steady. "I am grateful for the honor you offer, truly, but I cannot accept being claimed, not like this." "Explain yourself," the Queen commanded. Her tone was dangerous. Jake squeezed Ilara's hand, trying to send reassurance through the bond. "Princess Ilara saved my life. She gave me the gift of this bond. I feel what she feels. I know her heart. But I will not let her make a choice based on gratitude or obligation." He turned to face Ilara directly. "You kept me alive because you're a good person with healing abilities. The bond formed because of necessity. I won't let you tie yourself to me because you feel you owe me something, or because your mother declared it. That's not fair to you." Tears welled in Ilara's eyes. "You think I do this out of obligation?" "I think you're under incredible pressure," Jake said gently. "I think the whole galaxy is watching. I think you need time to figure out what you really want without everyone telling you what you should do." "I know what I want," Ilara said fiercely. "Maybe. But I need you to be sure. I need you to choose freely." Jake looked back at the Queen. "Your Majesty, you said I'm yours. But I'm not. I'm my own person. And so is your daughter. If we decide to be together, it should be our choice. Not a declaration. Not an obligation. A choice." The Queen stared at him for a long moment. Then, incredibly, she smiled. "You refuse power, position, and a princess because you want her to choose you freely?" "Yes, ma'am." This is either the most foolish or the most noble thing I have ever witnessed, Mystara said. She looked at her daughter. What do you say to this, Ilara? Ilara was crying openly now. Through the bond, Jake felt her emotions shifting. The hurt was fading, replaced by something else. Wonder, joy, love. I say he understands me better than I thought possible, Ilara said. I say he sees me as a person, not just a princess. I say his heart is true. She turned to Jake. You are right. The choice should be ours. So I will make mine now in front of everyone. I choose you, Jake Harrison. Not because my mother commands it. Not because of the bond. Not because you saved my life. I choose you because of who you are. Because you make me laugh. Because you showed me music and poetry and taught me to see beauty in simple things. Because you would give up everything just to make sure I have the freedom to choose. That is the man I want. Jake felt his own eyes burning. Ilara. But you are also right that this should not be rushed, she continued. So I will wait. I will give you time to think, to be sure, to make your own choice without pressure. Because that is what love does. It waits, the queen laughed. It was a sound of genuine delight. Well then, it seems I was too hasty in my declaration. She addressed the crowd. Let it be known that I misspoke. Jake Harrison is not mine. He is his own, as he has boldly reminded us. But by his courage and by my daughter's choice, he is welcome in this house as family. And when they both have made their choices freely, we shall celebrate whatever they decide. Ambassador Carter was wiping her eyes. Leave it to a human to turn down a princess in front of the entire court and somehow make it romantic, she muttered. Jake and Ilara stood together in the center of the throne room, still holding hands. The bond between them sang with shared emotion. No words were needed. They both knew this was the right path, but Jake also knew something else. He already knew his choice. He'd known it the moment he'd thrown himself in front of that plasma blast. The waiting wasn't for him. It was for her. To prove that he valued her freedom more than his own desires, that was love. And he was already deep in it. Jake stood in the royal gardens the night before his scheduled departure back to Earth. The valerian flowers glowed softly in the darkness, bioluminescent in shades of blue and purple. 3 moons hung overhead, painting everything in silver light. It was beautiful, but not as beautiful as the woman walking toward him. Ilara wore a simple white dress. Her silver hair was loose, flowing past her shoulders. Through their bond, Jake felt her sadness mixed with understanding. She'd agreed that he should return to Earth. She'd even helped him make the arrangements. You leave tomorrow, she said softly, coming to stand beside him. Yeah. Jake stared at the moons. 3 months. I asked for 3 months to think. That is a long time. Not really. Not for a decision this big. He turned to face her. Ilara, if I stay, if I choose this, my whole life changes. I stop being just Jake Harrison. I become part of something bigger, part of your world. I need to know I'm ready for that. I understand, Ilara said. And through the bond, he knew she did. I also need this time. My mother is right that such bonds are sacred, but I do not want you to feel trapped. I want you to be certain. What will you do while I'm gone? Learn, she replied. My mother has agreed to let me study human culture more deeply. I want to understand where you come from, what shaped you, and I have been thinking about some of our traditions. Some of them are old and perhaps need to change. Jake smiled. Sounds like you'll be busy. And you? What will you do on Earth? Talk to my family, talk to my commanders, figure out if I can live in 2 worlds at once. He took her hand. Even that simple touch sent warmth through the bond. But I have to be honest with you. I already know what my choice will be. Ilara's breath caught. You do? I knew when I woke up and saw you crying beside that chamber. I knew when I felt what you'd done to save me. I knew even before that, maybe, when you listened to my music and treated me like a person instead of just a soldier. Jake squeezed her hand. But I need to do this right. I need to go home and come back of my own free will, not because your mother declared it, not because of diplomatic pressure, because I chose it. That is very human of you, Ilara said with a small smile. This need to make grand gestures. Is it working? Yes, she laughed. It is working very well. They stood together in silence, just being close. The bond hummed between them, carrying emotions back and forth. Peace, anticipation, a bittersweet sadness at the coming separation. 3 months will feel like forever, Alara whispered. I know. But we have this. Jake pressed his hand over his heart. The bond. You'll feel me even from light years away. You'll know I'm thinking of you. Promise me something, Alara said. Promise me you will be honest with yourself. If you decide this life is not for you, if you find that you cannot leave Earth behind, I will understand. I do not want you to choose me out of obligation. Same promise, Jake said. If you decide, during these 3 months, that you want someone from your own world, someone who understands your culture better, you have to tell me. No obligation. Deal. They sealed it with a kiss under the 3 moons, and Jake felt the bond flare bright between them. The next morning, Jake boarded a human transport ship. Ambassador Carter was returning to Earth as well, the medical technology agreement secured. As the ship pulled away from Ashara Prime, Jake stood at an observation window and watched the planet shrink into the distance. Through the bond, he felt Alara watching from the surface. He sent her reassurance and love, and felt her send it back. Earth looked exactly the same and completely different when Jake arrived 3 months later. He'd spent weeks with his family in Colorado, explaining everything. His mother cried. His father asked 1,000 practical questions. His sister punched his arm and told him he was an idiot for falling for someone who lived on another planet. But she was grinning when she said it. He'd spent time with military brass discussing his options. They were surprisingly supportive. Having a human this deeply connected to the Valerian royal family could be advantageous for humanity, but they also made it clear the choice was his. They wouldn't pressure him either way. Jake had hiked through the mountains where he grew up. He'd listened to music and read books and thought about what kind of life he wanted. And the more he thought about it, the more certain he became. His place wasn't on Earth anymore. Maybe it never really had been. He'd always been looking up at the stars, wondering what was out there. Now he knew. And he'd found something more precious than all the wonders of the galaxy combined. He'd found someone who saw him completely and loved him anyway. Someone who challenged him and respected him and made him want to be better. Someone who'd literally bound her soul to his to keep him alive. Yeah. His choice was made. Jake bought passage on a civilian transport heading for Ashara Prime. He didn't wear his uniform this time. Just regular clothes. Just Jake Harrison, private citizen, making a choice about his future. The journey took 2 weeks. Through the bond, he felt Alara's surprise when she sensed him getting closer, her excitement, her hope. He sent back his own feelings, letting her know he was coming home. When the transport docked, Jake made his way through the spaceport alone. He'd sent only one message ahead. Not to the palace, not to the queen, to Alara. Just 3 words. I'm coming home. She was waiting in the royal gardens where they'd said goodbye. Alara stood under the same tree wearing a simple dress. Her hair was pulled back. She looked beautiful and nervous and hopeful all at once. Jake walked toward her, his heart pounding. Through the bond, their emotions were crashing together like waves. Joy. Relief. Love so strong it hurt. You came back, Alara said when he stopped in front of her. I made a promise, Jake replied. I said I'd make my choice freely. So here I am, Alara. No uniform, no orders, no diplomatic pressure. Just me. Choosing you. Choosing this life. If you'll have me. If I will have you. Alara laughed and tears spilled down her cheeks. Jake Harrison, I have been counting the days, the hours, the minutes. I have felt you through the bond, getting closer. I have hoped and feared and dreamed. So yes, I will have you. I choose you too. Jake pulled her into his arms and kissed her. The bond between them flared so bright he could almost see it, binding them together more perfectly than before. I love you, Jake said. I've probably loved you since you listened to my music and looked at me like humans were worth knowing. I love you, Alara replied. I have loved you since you threw yourself in front of a weapon to save me, since you refused my mother's declaration because you wanted me to be free, since you left to prove you could come back on your own terms. They held each other for a long time. Finally, Alara pulled back slightly. My mother wants to see you. She has been waiting to hear your decision. Let me guess. She already knows? She suspected. But she wants to hear it from you. They walked together to the throne room. The queen was waiting, but this time there was no crowd. Just Mystara, sitting on her throne, watching them approach with ancient, knowing eyes. Lieutenant Harrison, the queen said. Or should I say simply Jake Harrison, since you come as a civilian? Jake is fine, Your Majesty. You have returned. You have made your choice. I have. I choose Alara. I choose this life. If you'll allow it. The queen studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled. 3 months ago, I declared you mine. You refused because you wanted my daughter to have the freedom to choose. You wanted that freedom yourself. So I will ask now, what do you choose? And what does my daughter choose? Alara stepped forward. I choose Jake. Not because you command it, not because of the bond, but because he is my equal, my partner, my love. I have spent these months learning about humans, Mother. They have a saying, home is where the heart is. My heart is with Jake. Wherever he goes, that is my home. And you, Jake Harrison, what do you say? Jake took Alara's hand. 3 months ago, you said I was yours. You were wrong. But not completely wrong, because I am choosing to be part of this family. Not as property, not as an obligation, but as Alara's partner, as someone who will protect this house and honor it. If that makes me yours, then I accept it. Queen Mystara rose from her throne. She descended the steps and stood before them both. I was hasty in my first declaration. I spoke from tradition and law. But you both have taught me something valuable. True bonds cannot be commanded. They must be chosen freely. So let me say this now, before anyone who would witness. She raised her voice, and guards and attendants appeared from side doors, responding to some signal Jake hadn't noticed. Jake Harrison is not mine, the queen declared. He is his own person, as my daughter is her own person, but by his free choice and Alara's free choice, he is family. He is bonded to my daughter in the sacred way, and together they represent something new, a bridge between our species, a proof that love and choice matter more than tradition or politics. She placed a hand on each of their heads. I bless this bond. I welcome you, Jake Harrison, to the royal house, not as subject, as family. Jake felt emotion welling up in his chest. Thank you, Your Majesty. Call me Mystara when we are private. You are family now. She smiled. Though I warn you, my daughter can be quite stubborn. I've noticed, Jake said, grinning at Alara. I kind of love that about her. The bonding ceremony was held 2 weeks later. It combined human and